better with the sound? Can everybody hear us okay now?
How do we sound?
How are we sounding, okay? Yes, okay, good. All right, good. Yes, very good. All right, well, hello, everybody. Thank you for your patience.
Welcome to the rocky launch of Third Shift Reality's Shop Talk, where we sit around in our pajamas or whatever else we feel like, smoke our pipes. I'm sorry, I'm the only smoker, of course. Eat our snacks, maybe even distract ourselves while we answer your questions and otherwise tackle topics of game design and those questions pertinent to ourselves and the games that we run on Third Shift Realities.
Yes. So feel free to type in any questions, comments that you have for us, and we will answer them to the best of our ability.
That being said, we will have a starter topic because who could expect you guys to get this car started? We asked you to get in here. Right. You poor bastards. We do love you for that.
So the the topic we are going to be starting with is how both of us got into tabletop gaming.
Should we start with you?
Yes. So mine is not as is a lot later in life. I had always wanted to play tabletop games, but never had anybody to play with. And then I met Kevin. And the first game he ever ran for me was a solo adventure for Shadowrun.
Yep.
Where I played my first ever character, Edie.
This is before I was writing for Shadowrun, too.
Yeah.
I was just a fan back then.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I played my first ever character, Edie. And then after that, I tackled running some Pathfinder. And original setting of Pathfinder.
Yet to be published.
And the first adventure I used was Isle of Dread, and I translated it to Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm. And that original setting to make it work, which I still have the notes for.
And then I also ventured into our usual Wednesday gaming group, and I ran some Shadowrun also.
Yep, that game went on forever.
I think it was just the one I ran was just a one-night thing.
Yeah, but that was a very effective team, and in 4 hours we could get a whole thing done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
we played that for like years.
Yep. Till, as inevitably happens, groups break up.
Groups broke up, and then me and Kevin formed another group. And we started off with Shadowrun, but since we had been playing for, thank you, Sandy, it was at least 3 or 4 years of Shadowrun. And so when me and Kevin broke off and started a different group, we originally started with Shadowrun, but Kevin was a little Shadowrunned out, and nobody else wanted to run. So we switched over. Kevin wanted to switch over to Chronicles of Darkness, specifically Vampire the Requiem. Oh, I also ran Don Sillamort for Kevin and our friend Sandy, who's watching. We had a little subgroup of the 3 of us, and Kevin had been wanting to play Don Sillamort for a really long time, and he said that I should run it because he thought I would really like it because he said it's like Buffy but darker.
Ashley's a huge Buffy the Vampire fan. Yeah, and she's also really dark.
Yes. So I ran Don Sillamort for Kevin and Sandy, but then after I finished that whole little pre-written adventure, we stopped, and we were just then playing in our Shadowrun group, which then broke up, and me and Kevin formed another subgroup, and like I said, we were playing Shadowrun, but Kevin didn't want to run anymore, and nobody else wanted to run it, so then Kevin's like, I really want to get back to Vampire the Requiem, and I was like, oh, I don't know, I really don't want to. And he's like, but you had so much fun running it. And it was like pulling teeth to get me to run it again.
I'm so glad that you can admit that.
But I finally gave in and agreed to run Vampire the Requiem. Unfortunately, Kevin of our little group was the only one who was going to play a vampire. I wanted to play a werewolf.
I mean, Sandy played a vampire, but she wasn't...
She did, but she wasn't in the subgroup when we started the game up again.
That's true.
Like, she came once in a while, but she wasn't, like, a regular. She was, like, a guest star. So actually, what inspired me to pick up and run and start running Vampire again was I took a trip to New Orleans with my family, and that's where we had our game set in New Orleans because that's where Don Stillamore is set. And I got this really cool idea for I believe the vampires that are like myth in New Orleans were the Carter brothers, and so I started a run with them, and we had Kevin playing William, who he's playing now in our Tooth and Claw Chronicles stream. I was playing Artemis, who I'm playing now.
Yep.
Our friend Whitney played. She played a few different things, and then finally settled on a fan-made character type for Princess the Hopeful. So it's like kind of like a Sailor Moon kind of a thing.
It's Sailor Moon with elements of a fanfic called Sailor Nothing, which is basically Sailor Moon but with like PTSD and lost innocence. It's dark as hell.
Yes, we had someone else in our group playing a Promethean. So we had a little weird group of people.
For those who don't know, a Promethean is Frankenstein, or a golem, or some other collection of body parts reconfigured into a new person.
Yeah, but we played that game. We've been playing that game for like 6 years now. Before we started the Twitch campaigns for Artemis and William, we had played that game with our other friends for like 5 years. So I think it's like 6 years now, 6 or 7 years now that we've been playing these characters. And then later on, we had another friend of ours join us to play originally what was an NPC character named Trevor, who was a frat boy at Tulane.
Started as a joke.
Started as a joke, but became
a beloved player character.
Yes, a beloved player character. Yeah, so that's actually how me and Kevin perfected our what we call Gemini GMing.
Insofar as we consider it perfect.
Well, where we both run and play at the same time. I was in charge of Kevin and Whitney's game, and then he was in charge of mine and the guy who played the Prometheans game.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, I think I took over all three of you, and you just ran for Artemis.
Well, we still did kind of a round robin thing.
Yeah, but I took over the main arcs for everybody.
Yes. One of the fun things about that was that we were able to collaborate with all the other players for one isolated player. So you could bounce ideas around and maybe like do a little stuff to help support that plot for that person, which is unorthodox. I think that most groups have a pretty solid line between the game master, storyteller, dungeon master, and they, the group is in...
Sandy was our secret keeper since we couldn't tell each other everything because we were also playing the game.
It is true.
We had Sandy, we would tell Sandy secrets, and she would be like, yes, you can do that, or, ooh, why don't you try this?
Or, I don't get it.
Yeah, or I don't get it.
Which was a pretty good sign that we were off the track. But most groups have the division between the storyteller and the group. And the group works together to figure out what the storyteller's doing, which, they might have people they bounce ideas off of, or maybe they do it themselves, but they do not have the ability to really bounce around with the group necessarily. And in our case, almost everybody took a stab at it. Whitney, if you're out there, you owe me a game.
Yeah, you were supposed to run for us in Japan.
Where's that Japan game?
Yeah.
But yeah, so we really got to play around with that, and after a while we found that, Ashley and I at the very least could bounce back and forth, both being the storyteller, but still playing our characters without metagaming, because we could throw twists and curves into it with our own perspectives of something. And the end result wasn't always what either of us planned, but came out the richer for it. Mm-hmm. And I'm super grateful to have a partner in crime like that, because it's very rare to find somebody where you just throw the ball back and forth and it gets better every time.
Yep.
So that was really cool.
Yeah, and it caused a lot of thinking on the feet sometimes, because I would have something planned out and then Kevin would throw a wrench in it, and I'd be like, whoop, swerve. Go this way, go this direction.
What did you say about preparing games for me?
Oh, yeah, so for Kevin, for a lot of people I run games for, I have sort of a very detailed kind of overarching story and how it's going to go, because most of the people I run for are more, they like to have kind of like the game where it's like, do you want to choose A or B? But with Kevin, he's like very free form. So with Kevin, the way that I run for him is I literally have an idea of where it's going to begin and where it's going to end, and then like sometimes some bullet points in the middle, and that's about it. And then I let him go, which is really fun for me because it really got me familiar with the world of New Orleans and all of the NPC characters, both from the book and ones that I created, so that like if he did something and went somewhere I wasn't expecting or talked to someone I wasn't expecting, I would immediately know how they would react and what they'd be thinking, or if they even were available. So that was really fun. Sandy asks, who's your favorite NPC that you've created?
Well, we know your answer, so...
Yes, my favorite NPC that I created. Well, I actually have two. So people who watch our stream haven't met the first one, and he was the first NPC that I created all by myself. His name is Dr. Michaels. And he's somewhat of a mystery. He's not a vampire. But he seems to know an awful lot about the kindred and their secrets.
He is a coroner.
Yes, he's very fascinating.
He was the coroner.
He was the coroner in New
Orleans. The New Orleans Police Department in the French Quarter.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
And he likes to hang out at the crazy corner.
I still don't have a clear picture of this guy in my head.
So he's like he's short, sort of hunched. He has like thin rimmed glasses, bald on the top with like the hair around, and he's got a mole on his cheek. If you had to peg an age on him, you would say like late 60s. Mm. And usually wearing a lab coat, even when he's out in public. Oh
yes, contributes to the stains, don't you know?
Yes, and yes, he loves to hang out at the crazy corner on Bourbon Street. And so that's my first, very first.
He's not a local.
Yeah, very first NPC in Chronicles of Darkness. Not very first NPC ever. The very first NPC in Chronicles of Darkness that I created all by myself.
So who's your other favorite?
So my other favorite is, if you watch William's show, you know him, Nux.
It's a Spike XP, and we all know it.
Hey, he's more than just Spike.
I know
that. Based him off of two other people as well.
Oh. But he's Spike. And I believe you even told a certain somebody that...
Yes, I did. I said I based him partially off of Spike.
Yeah, but who did you tell?
Oh, yes. I got to have a conversation with James Marsters, and I told him that I made an NPC partially based off of Spike. And then...
And he was all...
And then, I know, he was all like, oh my goodness. And then he asked me about him, and I was like, wait, what? You want to know about him? So then I started babbling. But
spent the whole interview talking about that. It was adorable.
Because I started babbling. But yeah,
true.
So
she wept womanly tears. Whatever that, I don't know, it's the opposite of manly tears. She wept passionate tears.
I love James Marsters. But yeah, so
cool.
Who's your favorite NPC?
That I've made? Oh,
or
gosh.
Just in general.
I mean, the one that the question was that I've created. Mm. So
yes,
I had to make so many. I mean, Digger started out.
I know who my favorite is of yours.
Digger started out as a NPC for a werewolf game, just a story seed in one of the books, and he was an NPC werewolf for some game. Could have been Hunter or Innocent, I think. It was the Innocent book, and I just decided to twist him around until he became a primary antagonist. And a really creepy one at that, if I do give myself that credit.
Yeah, he was very creepy.
But if I was to say truly original, I would say probably Martinet. Martinet was one of the hounds under the command of the prince, or the sheriff of New Orleans, Donovan. She was a Nosferatu, but she had that unique thing where all Nosferatu in Requiem, unlike Masquerade, in Masquerade, if you're a Nosferatu, you're ugly. You're really like monstrously ugly. Your existence is potentially a breach of the masquerade. In Requiem, that's not necessarily the case. You have a negative, you have a penalty to your social roles because there's something about you that puts people off. One of the characters in Danse de l'Amour, he just looks sick. Like, sick enough that you kind of don't want to be close to him. Another one that we just saw in one of our offline games, he has when he looks at you, it makes you extraordinarily comfortable. You're pretty sure he's going to kill you.
Josu from New Orleans in the book, he's Nosferatu, and he's like very, very extremely attractive to everybody. But the more time you spend with him, the more sad and alone you feel.
In Martinique's case, she was based off a friend of mine, Mandy Morbid, back in the day, and I remember being a bit intimidated by how pretty she was, and I thought, how would you weaponize that? So Martinique is a Nosferatu who is attractive enough to make you uncomfortable.
Erica, I'm gonna throw in my love for Nux. Everyone loves Nux.
Even I love Nux.
Don't get too attached, everybody.
There was a point where Ashley was like, how would you feel if Nux died? How would you feel if so-and-so died? And I was like, please don't kill Nux. She's like, you do love him. I'm like, shut up. No, don't.
Everybody loves Nux. I posed that question to our friend, Eric. I said, don't get too attached to him, and Erica goes, don't say that. I posed the question to Whitney about, like, I was like, how would you feel if I killed Nux? And she was like, I would not like that.
That would make me sad.
And I was like, okay. So I mean, that doesn't mean nothing will happen to him, because as Sandy has said, I am very Whedon-like, only more cohesive.
And,
so the fact that you all love Nux means
less
he's in danger.
Sexist and whatnot, but let's not
delve into that. But
unpack
so
Whedon
if you all love Nux, watch out.
Oh, never fall in love.
Never fall in love with my characters.
It's true. Child killer.
Hey.
Hey, what?
Twice.
Oh, that's it.
And anyway, so besides Vampire the Requiem, I also run D&D. I started a Princes of the Apocalypse campaign for D&D 5e, which got postponed because of personal things going on in the group and with me, and I need to pick that back up. But I was running that, and I also was running, I was running two different kinds of Princes of the Apocalypse. I had two different groups. One group, I was running it pretty much as written, and the other group, I changed it a little bit, but that got stopped because of COVID, and hopefully we'll be picking that one up again soon. The games that's how I got into gaming. And the games I do are Shadowrun, Pathfinder, D&D, and Chronicles. And Buffy. I did run a Buffy game for a brief time, which I really want to pick back up.
Read my mind again.
But I think that's all the games I've ran and played in. I think I've ran at every single game I've ever played into, at least once.
I think so.
Yeah, I've ran a D&D, I ran a Pathfinder.
You ran a Rifts for like 20 minutes?
I did run a Rifts once. Yes. Yeah.
Oh, let's see. How did I get into it?
Yeah. Kevin's turn.
Forever ago. So I really wanted to do role-playing games, but my mom was very hesitant about it. She even had me sit down and watch that Tom Hanks movie, Mazes and Monsters. And where, like, Tom Hanks meets up with some kids in college, but his latent psychological problems during a LARP in a sewer has a break with reality. And so Tom Hanks is, like, losing his grip on reality because, like, D&D is so good. And my mom's like, see, it's dangerous. And I was like, wait, you're telling me you can dress up and play with swords in the sewers? That sounds like the coolest thing ever. So it backfired badly. But yeah, I was never scared by it because the world is weird enough that the escapism doesn't mean getting trapped. But yeah, I remember she was working as a security patrol officer at Woodfield Mall, and one of her coworkers wanted to give me a bunch of D&D books, and she was like, no. um, and then I finally got my hands, my first role-playing book that I ever picked up that I'm aware of. Yeah, no, the first one I ever picked up was, I had the MechWarrior SNES game. And my neighborhood had a reputation. Back when you could rent video games from a video rental store, like Blockbuster, kids, um, or Family Video, which still exists in some places. You could pick up a cartridge and rent it for 3 days, and I had the MechWarrior Super Nintendo game, which was completely not fitting in with the plot of the actual game, but I loved it. It was my first sandbox mercenary, almost roguelike in a weird way. And I wasn't supposed to take video games to friends' houses, but I went over to Frank Luckett's house. He wasn't home for some reason. I went home, my mom wasn't home, and I didn't have a key for some reason, so I went across the street to our neighbor, Grant Dittmer, who is one of the coolest humans ever. And he was like fixing up a Trans Am or something in his garage. And he said hi, and I just started babbling Geekanese at him. And he was like, MechWarrior, huh? Goes in the house and he pulls out the 3025 technical manual and the 3026 technical companion. And I'm like, oh my god, there's a whole game. There's so many more giant ass robots. And he told me he was lending them to me, but if he ever needed them, he'd ask for them. I still have them. Grant, if you ever need them back, like, for real, I keep them in good condition. And after that, I started buying MechWarrior and BattleTech stuff, and, I didn't have anybody to play with except my dad, who wouldn't ever let his, 12-year-old son win. And then he got, obsessed and started, making all of Wolf's Dragoons for the MechWarrior fans out there. Until I inherited them somehow. But yeah, there was a FASA catalog, back when FASA had MechWarrior, and I saw Shadowrun and Earth Dawn and stuff like that, and said, "Ooh, this looks crazy." I got the Sega. I got the Sega version of Shadowrun, and that got me to buy those books. I conned my mom into getting me the third edition core book from a Barnes and Noble before I took a trip to Dallas. I think it was Texas anyway, and I read the whole damn book on the flight over while listening to the Johnny Mnemonic soundtrack on my Walkman. And that started a love affair. And I got into Vampire the Masquerade and some D&D, and a friend at the time introduced me to Rifts, which I still read. And I'm even running a Rifts game right now.
It's just an interesting game. I just thought maybe I'll give it another shot.
It's hard to play.
I lost all my notes for your old game though, so I can't remember what I was gonna do for you. But I remember it was good.
I adore your modesty.
It was because you had told me what you wanted, and it would pretty much hit every point of what you wanted. I don't know what happened to those notes.
But anyway, so I don't know. I got my friends to play role-playing games with me, and there were some really bad games. I think the first one I ever actually ran was Star Wars, 2nd edition West End Games version. That was the first one I ran for people. Ran it for my family, I ran it for my friends. I learned everything about Star Wars back in the day. I've fallen behind now, but I knew it all back then.
Oh yeah, we're in a Star Wars game. Erica, which our friend Erica is running.
Oh, it's so good. It is so. I spent so an unreasonable amount of time researching the rules just to be a better player for that game. I'm so into it. It's such a good group. Like Dustin, Nick, Yumi, and Lindsay. Oh man, it's so good. I wish you guys could see that one, but it's for us. Mm-hmm. But yeah, after that, I managed to form a group against all odds in college. That's where we met. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the way, somehow I got hired by Catalyst Game Labs to write for Shadowrun, which sort of parlayed me into a little bit of work here and there with Onyx Path for Vampire the Masquerade, and almost a project for Promethean, which honestly I get why they didn't use it. They were mucks on all ends, but it was Yeah, so I'm still writing RPGs, but as far as what I'm running, God, I'll figure it out if you hand it to me. I honestly, the only thing I haven't really run lately is that like jumps to mind as a big thing is D&D Fifth, which is funny because that's what everyone is doing now. And as usual, I have to be the fucking outsider. But I can do Chronicles of Darkness, Requiem, Werewolf. I can do. I still haven't figured out Mage. Never had anybody to play it with because nobody ever wants to be a mage.
It's complex.
It is. There's plenty of other settings, and I find out ways to weave the lore into it, but I don't necessarily know everything about it. Those of you who've been following Tooth and Claw, if you didn't put it together, Artemis fought a demon. Not in the pitchfork sense, but in the rogue probe. She basically fought Agent Smith from the Matrix, except he looked like something out of XCOM.
In New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina.
No, I mean last session.
Oh, last session.
In the box.
Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
No, the one.
Oh, the one in New Orleans was not.
That was a male gene.
Yes.
Technically, not entirely. We are not so OP gangbusters that you wrestle a male gene into compliance. That's we're potent. We're not power gamers.
Well, the only reason that I was able to was because it had possessed, not Digger, but the other guy.
Gamble.
Mm-hmm. And that's the only reason I was able to get it.
Mm-hmm. And you had a lot of help from a lot of sources, from a lot of language.
We had mages and werewolves and vampires and
that was
princesses. And
JRPG level, like,
it was a big,
stuff.
big battle. Artemis did not do it alone.
What else? What else is on the menu? There's All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Buffy, Rifts.
We're trying to learn Blades in the Dark.
It is not the traditional way to play an RPG.
No.
What else? We've got, hell, I'll run the Sailor Moon RPG for you.
Good Society.
Good Society.
Yeah.
The Jane Austen RPG. That's actually pretty damn good. Top shelf.
Yeah.
But yes, we have fun with that. Let's see. OGL Steampunk back in the day. Pathfinder 1.0. I still have to figure out 2.0. What else? I think we figured out how to run like Genesis system games like Star Wars at this point, so we could probably pull that off. Old D6 Star Wars if you just want to up Grognard it, which no shame. I do also still remember like Vampire the Masquerade. I haven't gotten around to 5th Ed. There was some complication when it was coming out, and I'm still getting over that. But V20 and the classics, 3rd edition, stuff like that. I'll go Masquerade, Apocalypse. Hell, I'll figure out Ascension if it comes to it. But yeah, huge list of games. Like there's more I'm forgetting. I know it.
But mostly, the two of us really like just telling stories with people. So there's games that people want to play that we've never played or ran before. We're usually willing to just jump right in.
Oh yeah.
Because of the story.
There's like a couple. There's multiple ways to look at how a game is put together. You've got role playing and you've got role playing, and we're definitely roll with an L and roll with an E. I think we're definitely the roll with an E type people.
Yeah.
The dice are there to inform the story, to help the story be told, versus a simulationist approach, which is much more about like beating the statistical odds, which I don't think any less of somebody for enjoying that. It's just not how I roll. Yeah.
That's also why we don't let people we run for roll the dice themselves.
It depends on the game. Like Star Wars, you kind of have to. Blades in the Dark, you would have to.
Yeah, you'd have to see it. But for most of the games,
that was a trick.
Like if you watch the Tooth and Claw Chronicles, you'll see that when Kevin's running, he rolls for me, and I don't know what he rolled, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. That's for those of you who remember the Dead Alewives. That giant would have killed you, man. But I admired your spark, so I helped you. But you got, I think that fudging is pretty important. I think the dice are there to help tell a story.
Yeah.
I mean, I picked that whole thing up from the Ravenloft 3rd edition book. That was Sword and Sorcery. I think that was Art House or something like that, or could have been White Wolf. It was certainly written like it. That GM guide, if you can find it, still one of the best. Still one of the best. I use stuff I learned out of that to this day, and that's like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. But yeah, that's they talked about the big secret. You never let your players see what you roll, so they have to sit in suspense and they can't calculate stuff. The Ravenloft game that I ran around that time, I went so far as to never let the players see their character sheets. Peter Martin, if you ever watch this, do you remember that? I gave them archetypes they could choose from, and after that they could design their characters. But they never saw their sheets. And if they wanted to improve a score, they had to practice that in the game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and if you're like, well, what are they capable of doing? I gave them a rough idea, and then I let them test their abilities at a carnival, which I thought was creative, but later I found out that's not a very original idea. But hey, I got there on my own, so whatever. And one character went to a knife throwing contest, rolled 3 20s in a row, and was like, man, I'm really good at throwing stuff. The rest of the game missed everything. Why am I bad at this now? Because sometimes you get lucky and you think you're gifted, which is basically my youth. But yeah, so there's a lot of ways to play your game. It definitely stopped our players from optimizing the math.
Yeah.
If you can't see the sheet, you really have to play the idea. And I like it. So, yeah, keep the questions coming, guys. We enjoy that.
So while people are thinking of questions, do we want to talk a little bit about the Tooth and Claw Chronicles world that we created?
Yes, it is. It started.
It started
as the canonical 1st edition.
No.
Well, mostly.
No. I changed stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, like, session 0, session 1.
Well, for Don Stillamort, I stayed basically true to Vidal and who the people were. I think I did change Barons and Materio.
Yeah.
I never played him as written.
I've read his entry. I wouldn't have known otherwise.
Yeah. So yeah, it all started, our world started in New Orleans with Vampire the Requiem, specifically Don Stillamort. And from there we took it and just kind of built on what was canon and changed some of it. So like right now in our New Orleans in 2005, during where Artemis is off in Seattle and William's off in Poland, New Orleans right there, Pearl Chastain is actually the Prince of New Orleans, or Queen, as she likes to be called.
But she was given a lot more to do than the New Orleans book.
Yeah, the New Orleans book kind of painted her as like a kindred that was just bored with it all.
Yeah, she seemed just done.
Yeah.
Which...
But I actually really liked her backstory, so I went ahead and I altered it slightly. Do we want to tell about her sire?
I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you want the surprise, or...
Because it's gonna come up in your memory.
Do you want the insights, or do you want to wait for the story? We will wait for an answer in the chat before we continue with that. I can say that our game addresses a lot of the crossover of the setting.
Yes, it does.
Vampires that have to deal with werewolf problems, werewolves that have to deal with vampire problems, everybody having to deal with mage problems. Because there is a shared cosmology. Is it cosmology? A shared universe between them.
Yeah.
And that universe means that what happens to one affects all. It's just that not everybody's equipped to see, let alone understand it from the other's point of view. Yeah. Werewolves and mages are more likely to have something to talk about than vampires and werewolves. Mm-hmm. But mages have a very different perspective on spirits than werewolves do.
Yeah. But I liked how we ran. Well, so in the book, we kept this in the New Orleans book. It said that werewolves had been banished from New Orleans years ago, and it didn't say why. So we came up with the reason why.
I think we can share that. Well, not why the vampires did it, but how.
Okay.
Because we've discussed that.
Well, I guess we could even say why they did it too.
Okay.
I don't know if that's gonna come up. necessarily.
I don't know. If I wonder if...
It's probably not going to come up for William. I mean, there might be a memory somewhere, but I feel like stuff with William's memories is more to unravel what Josephine changed. So, like, you will go run into mundane memories, but most of a lot of memories will be things that Josephine changed.
That's great. Let's see. So, I don't know. Should we tell them the impetus for the exile of the werewolves?
Yeah.
Okay. In the book, Cemetery is kind of trying to create his own bloodline, and he wants to ascend to something beyond being a vampire, which is funny that he's a crone and not a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And Vidal wanted to stave off incoming unstoppable torpor. The rules have changed since second edition. You could theoretically stay up forever, but it just gets harder and harder and harder to do. So we had to fudge a little bit when the edition went to second. Best updated edition ever, by the way. So good. But they had the two of them, even though they were like arch rivals and enemies, decided that they were going to work together to summon a great big mean old spirit.
Well, they were trying to summon Baron Samedi, the Loa.
Right. And the idea was that it would give them the power to get their mutual wishes. And something passed through them, but they're pretty sure it wasn't Baron Samedi. And
Baron Cemetery thought it was Baron Samedi at first.
Right.
But as time went on, he realized it was not.
And Vidal, who's hardcore Lankea et Sanctum, the vampire Catholic Church, was like, well, this is what I get for trucking with demons.
Yeah, because then after that, Vidal could only feed on kindred. He can't feed on humans anymore.
Well, that had partly to do with his age, right?
Mm-hmm.
No?
Oh,
okay.
I mean, I don't know what the book said, but in our world, it was because of the ritual.
Well, anyway, he definitely wasn't getting his blood potency reduced or his need to feed on only his own kind. So, the thing was, the place where they did the ritual was on a locus. And the magic that they did, it involved blood sacrifice. Surprise.
But they also had to have lots of people get killed there prior to the ritual.
And, well, this resulted in the locus becoming a nascent wound. A wound, for those who don't know, is a locus, or I guess any place, that has been so horrifically torn apart and violated by negative energy that it starts to lead to a place which, I think hell is too gentle a term, but it leads to a place which is one of the places which are dominated by the male Jinn, which are godlike creatures based around a sin. Sloth, envy, gluttony, you name it. This particular one was gluttony.
Which started Artemis's people addiction.
Yeah. But anyway, so the werewolves of the city were like, the fuck have you done? And the vampires went, oh shit, make them go away before they tell everybody what we did. Mm-hmm. And so, how do you get a bunch of werewolves out of a city when they're pissed at the vampires? The answer is a combination of bureaucracy, ruining their ability to operate within that area, and then making a whole bunch of ghouls, training them up some, and giving them a lot of training with celerity and plenty of silver buckshot. The werewolves can rip most things apart in a round, in their full war form. But there comes a point where if you throw enough bodies and ammo at it, even the ability to potentially dodge bullets doesn't mean you're going to dodge them all. And when a vampire or a ghoul can move at superhuman speeds, it's a lot easier to aim. It's a lot easier to kill. I never got to that, but Romero was one of them.
Oh shit.
Yeah, makes sense, huh?
Yeah, plus.
Yep. So, yeah, the werewolves were effectively exiled, and they took up lodging in Baton Rouge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Baton Rouge.
Which is where you take over.
Yeah, so, in the book, there's a NPC called Rosa Bale, and she's Circle of the Crone. She's like one of Baron Cemetery's biggest biggest competitors. And her sire is left very vague, but she's been true. And then she has, I forgot who her brother is. Is it Pierpont?
Yeah.
Yeah, Pierpont McGinn
McGinn.
Is supposed to be her like brother. So they have the same sire, and they're both been true. And I was always really confused because Rosa Bale in the book had a twin sister, and they were both supposedly killed by this man named Halliburton, but she wasn't because Halliburton was a gangrel. So, or I think he was gangrel. So that never made sense to me. It was a little confusing, but I was able to suss it out so that like he didn't actually kill her, but the person who was her sire, since it didn't say, I went ahead and made it the Prince of Baton Rouge. I cannot remember what we named him because he didn't have a name in the book.
It's somewhere in the notes.
But yeah, somewhere in my notes. But he took in all the werewolves and kind of made a deal with them because he wanted New Orleans because, Baton Rouge is technically the capital of Louisiana, but everyone talks about New Orleans. And that always ticked him off. And he always wanted to take over New Orleans. So he had let the werewolves come and stay in Baton Rouge if they agreed to help him take over New Orleans. Now, this is when Vidal was prince. But since Rosa Bale actually got in favor with Pearl Chastain, the two of them worked together to work on the Prince of Baton Rouge to sort of make a somewhat of a quiet, for now, truce, and then let Pearl become prince. And she was willing to be more, she was willing to let the werewolves back in, and she was willing to be more like cooperative with the Prince of Baton Rouge because Vidal just wasn't. So he agreed to that for now. What will happen after that is what we'll find out. Yeah, so that's kind of what was happening in Baton Rouge. Lots of werewolves. Artemis kind of almost got into trouble going to Baton Rouge because poor Artemis was a werewolf in New Orleans all by herself, all by her lonesome, and that's why she knows more about kindred than anything because all of her friends that she made were pretty much kindred. Everyone she knew was kindred. One of her best friends was William, who was trying to get into the Ordo, and so that's how she knew about that stuff, because the two of them would always be working together, and so that's why she knows more about kindred than actual werewolves. She's learning. She's trying to learn. Her brother, actually, her estranged brother, now not so estranged.
Rafe.
Rafe. He was actually a wolf, a werewolf as well. She did not know. Apparently it runs in the family. Well, we don't actually know that either. It could just be a coincidence. But he's also a werewolf, and he had found out, and he kind of toured the world and found out a lot about werewolves. And then he came back to New Orleans. She still didn't know. And then she made the mistake of making a pact with Digger, not knowing any better, because Digger was actually the first werewolf she had ever met.
And a balehound.
Yeah, and a balehound on top of that. So she made the mistake of making a pact with him.
Or more accurately, his patron, a male djinn.
Yes,
making her
a
balehound.
But she's not a balehound anymore. She was able to get out of that pact, and now she's, as people who watch the show know, she's in a pact with the big bad wolf.
Those of you who play some of the other games in the line may know what the big bad wolf really is.
But those who don't, you will have to wait to watch the show and find out.
Fun enough, I actually talked to a few of the developers of the lines and was like, do you think this would work? And they were like, it might. I'm like, well, we're going to explore it. And, if this whole thing works out, maybe we'll make a Storyteller's Vault book out of it or something. But yeah, so there's some cross-cosmology there. Mm-hmm. Yes, it is cosmology, because I kept thinking I was accidentally saying cosmetology.
No, yes, cosmology.
Yeah, so there's some crossover there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're having fun exploring that.
Yeah.
And the idea for William's like amnesia. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
His fake memories is sort of our way of exploring some of the stuff that we just skipped over in game, like for us, but also a way to introduce his past and some of the stuff we're talking about to you guys as we go.
The 6 years of gaming prior to being on Twitch, so that people can get a small glimpse into what William and his friends were up to prior to this.
Yeah, like Arrow, before it, turned really superhero.
And we're actually going to be having a spin-off, another chronicle to the Tooth and Claw Chronicles. I don't know if anybody remembers, but in the very first episode for Artemis, you met her almost fiance, Darian LaFontaine. And so stay tuned, everyone.
Because Mr. LaFontaine's got some tricks up his sleeve, too.
Yep.
And if it should come up, and if Erica's comfortable with it,
yep.
Her ongoing vampire game may make an appearance as well, as it exists within the continuity as well.
Yep.
So you could all get a glimpse at that mysterious lass and her extremely unlikely providence as well. That's another one. I had to go to some of the developers and be like, is this doable? They're like, yeah, that's doable. It's a solo game?
Yeah.
All right, that won't be too weird.
Thank you, Erica.
But yeah. Erica says that's a possibility. A definite possibility. All right, I'll take it. So let's see. We're winding up to the top of the hour. So
we're getting close to the hour mark here.
Last minute questions,
questions,
concerns, anecdotes, anything. It's our first show, so we're doing this very much by the seat of our pants.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What was a favorite scene of yours from our game?
Before this or after this?
Either.
Oh boy. Oh boy. I really liked when Josephine. Really, anytime Josephine shows up, I get screwed up. I'll tell you an epic story. For my birthday years ago, I'm just sitting around playing video games one day.
It was the day that I was supposed to come over and just hang out.
She's like, you need to come out here.
No. That's not how it happened.
Okay, you tell the story.
So
then.
He had given me the Mind's Eye theater books to run LARPs for Vampire, and I wrapped one of them up, and I said, "Here's your birthday present." And he opened it, and he was like, "This is my book." And I was like, "Yeah, it's for LARPing." And he was like, "Okay." And I'm like, "I'm gonna run you a LARP." And he was like, "Well, that will be nice one day." And I was like, "No, right now, get dressed."
Everybody promised LARPs, no one ever delivered.
Yeah, and I was like, "No, right now, get dressed." And then while he was in the bathroom, I let our friends Sandy and Dylan into his apartment. They were waiting at the back door, and Dylan was playing one of his old coder roommates, Edward, and Edward was a musician, so Dylan wrote a specific song.
He played The House of the Rising Sun, but with lyrics changed to fit my story, which was unreal.
Yeah, and then they were waiting for him, and so we got into Sandy's car, and we did a LARP in Chicago. That William, because in Dance to the Lord, everyone found their sires except William, because William wasn't actually supposed to be part of the original thing, but because Sarah Cobbler, who orchestrated it all, knew his sire Josephine, Josephine was able to con her way into having it happen, so it would kind of happen sort of under the radar. Because in New Orleans, you're not allowed to sire without permission.
What ensued was a LARP that took me all across Chicago. Friends and everything just all over the place, playing these characters. It was surreal. I felt so shocked and overwhelmed, and I think I did a terrible job because
I was just. To the Palmer House and the Miller's Pub.
Yep, and
Columbia College.
But my favorite part, like you want to know my favorite scene,
was when she came walking out at Grant Park.
I had this description of Josephine as looking like sort of the stereotypical pulp adventure heroine with like the khakis and the riding boots and the coat and the red hair and British. And well, we're not really friends with her anymore, but a friend at the time was really amazing at costumes, and I'll be damned if she didn't become the role. And for once, I see her in the park, I'm like, no. And as we're getting closer, Mazes and Monsters may have had something, because for one quick second, sanity slipped, and I was like, is this happening?
Is this for real? Is this real life? Yeah, because she stepped out from behind a tree. It was nighttime in Grant Park. I think it was a little foggy. And she stepped out from behind a tree, and it was just like this picture perfect moment.
Perfect.
For him meeting his sire for the first time.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, just that.
So,
yeah, that was a favorite.
Yeah.
What is
your favorite character that you've played?
William's definitely near the top. We've had a hell of a ride.
Artemis is probably, if not at the top, second, because I've been playing her for like a million years.
Obviously, I like Rick Red Lang from Shadowrun. I wrote a damn book about him.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I gotta say, the very first character I ever made, Evie, from Shadowrun, she was turned into a vampire at 16, so she always looked 16.
She appeared in the epilogue of Crimson.
Yes, she did.
For those who read it.
Little punk goth rich girl. Father was in the mob.
Yeah, there's always one of those in a Shadowrun group sooner or later, right?
Yep.
And I would
sort of, for those of you who watch Williams games, she was sort of Rose-esque. Not exactly, but pretty close.
Shades,
for sure, yeah.
And I'd say an Exile Dakmor, my Pathfinder character. I love him. He's still playing him. Mike Murphy, another game designer and actual real world archaeologist adventurer. He's been running me some. We've been running a back and forth Pathfinder game online for a while now. I just finished the Emerald Spire for his character, Morgan Ironwolf. Awesome.
Yeah.
And playing an Exile is always a treat with him. So, and anybody who cares to run it, but damn, I do like playing that character.
I have to say, there is a D&D character that I played with our friend Frank. Frank ran a game for like a minute. We only got to play like 3 times, I think, but she was a tiefling.
Yeah.
And
like the flaming whip and stuff, like dead as a Balor.
Yeah, flaming whips and stuff, and she was the first mate on a pirate ship. And there was this whole storyline about her and her father, and he was trying to like reach out to her to use her for something. It was a really cool game, and I wish we could have finished it, but she was fun to play.
So that takes us to 9 o'clock.
Yes, it does.
So we will wrap up then.
Yes, we shall wrap up. Thank you all for watching and for participating and for all of your questions. We hope you enjoyed our first installment of Shop Talk.
We're going to be doing this again, so let us know what you'd like to see on the channel. We're thinking maybe we'll go into some of the ways that a game can be planned, setting fleshed out, some of the stuff that we offer with our private tutoring, but in a more general way that might not be as focused for what you're looking for specifically. We also might have guests on. Let us know what kind of content you'd like, questions, comments, anecdotes, stories, interviews, the news in the geek world insofar as you can't find it on IG9 or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah,
also,
and send us questions.
Yeah, send us questions.
Always.
You can reach us on Facebook, which if you go to the About section on this channel, there's a link to our Facebook, a link to our Twitter. There's also a link to a Google Calendar that has a schedule for all of the content we're going to be bringing to you. We have a new show coming that's going to be once a month called Crit Chicks, which will be about being girls in gaming.
Feminism in gaming.
Yep, and we're going to talk about that. Next Monday, we are going to celebrate the official starting of our actual company. We've got our business license, and we started our Patreon, so we're going to have an Ask Us Anything on Monday, so tune into that where you can ask us anything. And of course, our usual shows, Jerry at Twitch with the raunchy and forgetful Edie and Mavis. And, William and Artemis' story for the Tooth and Claw Chronicles. And stay tuned for Darian LaFontaine.
And who knows, maybe Victoria.
And
who knows who else.
Rose could have a spinoff. Juliet could have a spinoff.
Nux could
have a spinoff.
Yeah, it all depends.
Nux's spinoff terrifies
who's into it and what do you guys want to see? Because we're going to fill up this channel with content, and we will not stop.
Yes. There will be lots of content. If for anything, it's because we have a lot of fun, especially playing in our Chronicles world that we've built.
It's true, and we've met a lot of great people in this industry, in this community, and we just want to give something back.
And I always love getting a chance to play Nux.
It's true. But yeah, also, As always, our eternal and completely inadequate thank you to all the people who make this channel possible. Lindsay, Erica, Heidi, Sarah, everybody, and especially to you.
Yes, thank you all for watching.
So, thank you ever so much.
Yes.
And we're gonna.
Do you know how to shut it off?
I don't.
Okay, I'm gonna go try to turn this off. Thank you all for watching.
So, bye. Love you. Bye.
Okay, hold on. Hang on, I'm almost there.